and that I will be chairing this meeting. May we have the roll?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Chair Klein,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fortney,
Hello?
We hear you, Commissioner Klein.
Hello?
Can you hear us? Commissioner Klein, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Fortney,
Here.
Commissioner Vargas, Commissioner Lightfoot,
Excuse me?
Commissioner Labonte, Commissioner Rudine, Commissioner Wilkerson.
Here.
Vice Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We will now present the pledge. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, next on our agenda is communications. Staff, do we have any communications for this evening's meeting?
Thank you, Vice Chair Fortney. We received 3 items of correspondence after the last packet was sent out. This includes a letter from Judine Scammon related to the Green Tree Project, an email from Gary Hauk also pertaining to the Green Tree Project, and a letter from Adams Broadwell regarding the Green Tree Project. And we'll address those in the presentation for that project.
Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? We have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Vargas?
Yes.
Commissioner Lightfoot?
Yes.
Commissioner Rudine? Yes. Commissioner Wilkerson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fortney?
Yes.
Chair Klein?
Present, here.
It might be Mike again.
That counts, right?
It might be my friend.
Thank you, Commissioner Klein. Now for the consent calendar, which is approval of the minutes. I believe we've all reviewed the agenda for the special meeting. Do I have a motion?
Sorry, Vice Chair Courtney, we have one correction to the minutes, which is the spelling of Scarlet and Scarlet Street. Just wanted to note that for the record, and we will correct that in the final minutes before they're published.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Do we have approval of the minutes with the correction? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Vargas is a second. Motion by Commissioner Klein. Can I have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Vargas?
Yes.
Commissioner Lightfoot?
Yes.
Commissioner Rudine? Commissioner Wilkerson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fortney?
Yes.
Chair Klein?
Commissioner Klein? Move forward.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The consent calendar is approved. There will be no business from the floor because this is a special meeting. Next, we will have our public hearing.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I cannot hear very well. I'm getting every third word or so. Do you mind turning up the volume, or is there anything you can do? I don't even know if anyone can hear me.
We can hear you loud and clear. We'll have communications up our volume for you.
Okay, I can hear you now as well. Thank you, Chair Courtney.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner Klein. Now's the time for our public hearing part of our agenda. We will have one item scheduled for the public hearing this evening. It will be the Green Tree Project. After I introduce the item, staff will make a brief presentation to the commission. I will then open up for public hearing and invite the applicant to provide their comments for a brief presentation. Once that's concluded, members of the public will then be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes each. We will then close the public hearing and bring the discussion back to the commission for a vote. Director Morris, would you like to introduce Our presenters?
Thank you, Vice Chair Fortney. This evening, we have a team of 3 presenting. We have Kathy Pease, a planning consultant the city hired to assist us with this project, planning manager Payman Bavand, and also Mark Teague from PlaceWorks. They're the firm the city hired to produce the EIR for the project. Also, just of note, we do have city staff in the audience from Public Works, Parks, and Traffic, and maybe others if questions come up. So with that, Kathy is going to kick off the presentation.
Good evening. I'm pleased to be able to present this Green Tree Development Project. The entitlements that are being considered are shown on this slide. The project area is generally located southeast of Highway 80 and west of Town Road. The city has been considering redevelopment of the Green Tree Golf Course for some time, and there have been numerous opportunities for the public to participate in the process. A formal application was submitted in 2016, and the Leisure Town Liaison Committee was formed. The applicant and the city met once a month over the years to give the community a chance to weigh in on the project as it was developed and to provide an avenue for dialogue. In 2018, the City Council initiated the general plan and specific plan and selected PlaceWorks to be the consultant to prepare the environmental impact report. Slide. Earlier this year, the Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, was available for public review, and the Commission held a hearing to get draft comments on May 17th. The project has been before the Solano County Airport Land Use Commission, and the project was found to be compatible with both the Netree and the Travis airports. The project has also been twice to the Parks and Recreation Commission, where they recommended approval to the City Council of the preliminary parks plans. And then most recently, the final EIR was published on August 10th. This slide shows the proposed project. The site is 185 acres in size and proposes 1,149 residential units, 299,345 square feet of commercial neighborhood serving uses, 2 parks, open space and trails, as well as infrastructure improvements. As part of the project, a specific plan has been prepared. It has allowed the city to comprehensively plan the area. In addition, a specific plan allows the city to create its own unique set of zoning, design standards, design guidelines, and a comprehensive plan for roadway improvements and phasing. As part of this project, 2 neighborhoods are planned. North of Sequoia Drive includes higher density housing, commercial services, and a 6-acre park. South of Sequoia includes 199 age-restricted single-family residential units and a 4.5-acre park. Both neighborhoods include stormwater detention improvements. The project will include a mix of land uses and zoning districts as shown on this slide. One of the key benefits of the project is the provision of what we call workforce housing. This is intended to provide housing that is more affordable to middle-income workers, and as shown on this slide, the density will range from 8.1 dwelling units per acre up to 24 dwelling units per acre. The general plan amendment would change the land use diagram to reflect 6 designations that are shown on this slide. As part of the project, the general plan amendment also will increase the general plan residential unit allocation by 1,149. It will change text to add references to the Green Tree specific plan. It will change tables to update and insert the Green Tree specific plan data. It will change all the figures to add the Green Tree development project to the relevant map layers. And it also is recommending a revision to a policy regarding the project's approach to the pending Solano County Habitat Conservation Plan. The zoning would be amended from private recreation to a mix of zoning districts consistent with the specific plan. And you can see before and the proposed changes, or existing and the proposed changes. project is requesting a development standard exception in order to allow 2 courts to exceed 600 feet in length. This is intended to reduce through traffic in the existing neighborhoods. And there is an emergency vehicle access that would be provided on the north end of the courts A and E shown. There's a vesting tentative subdivision map proposed. This would allow the creation of parcels. North of Sequoia would create 7 large residential lots that may be further subdivided in the future, 3 large commercial parcels, a 6-acre public park, and as part of the project, Gilly Way would be abandoned. However, other planned roadways in the area would provide adequate circulation. South of Sequoia, there are 199 small lots that would be created to facilitate the development of the senior age restricted portion of the project. A 4.5-acre public park would be provided in this area. As shown in this slide, the project will be providing significant stormwater drainage improvements, including the stormwater detention basins, which are shown in blue. This will improve existing drainage in the area and ensure that drainage from development of the project is sufficient. A specific project is proposed, which includes a planned development permit for the Green Tree Apartments. This would allow 240 multifamily units, including a clubhouse and amenities. The proposed elevations are shown on this slide and would include a mix of colors and materials. The parking would be consistent with the specific plan and includes 249 covered spaces and 144 uncovered spaces. 10 on-street parking spaces would be allowed on Yellowstone. The next 2 slides will talk about the development agreement. California law authorizes city to conduct structured negotiations with developers in order to obtain desired improvements in exchange for development rights. These are the deal points that are specific to Green Tree are shown on this slide, and it shows both city and applicant responsibilities. This includes the payment of fees, contribution to storm drain improvements in Yellowstone, the level of funding for maintenance for parks and traffic, among other things. So in crafting the DA, the city recognizes several benefits the project will bring to the community. These include the needed workforce housing and senior housing, 2 parks, open space and trails, a walkable mixed-use plan that is designed to reduce vehicle miles traveled by providing housing proximate to jobs, stormwater improvements, traffic calming, and net project revenue to the city's general fund. As I mentioned, the final EIR was published by the city on August 10th, which includes all the comments received on the draft EIR and responses to those comments. In response, the applicant has agreed to additional air quality mitigation measures. No additional impacts were identified as a result of the comments. So all feasible mitigation measures have been incorporated into the EIR, but nonetheless, there are still significant and unavoidable impacts to air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, and traffic. The city has prepared findings and a statement of overriding consideration that determine that the benefits of the project outweigh these significant impacts. I did want to mention that supplemental information has been provided today, which makes a clarification in the staff report. After the staff report was published, the applicant has requested that 2 letters be included with the staff report. There are also changes and clarifications that have been made to several attachments to clarify accurate project information and standard format. In conclusion, staff is recommending approval of the project. There have been significant public outreach, and the project provides significant public benefits to the city. Draft city council resolutions were provided in the planning commission packet. It should be noted that the planning commission should recommend that the city council adopt the resolution and ordinances in substantially the form of the attached resolutions. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to open up the public hearing.
Oh, before that,
Just briefly, our consultant, Mark Teague, would like to respond to the Adams Broadwell letter.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And you'll find their response to comments in the final EIR packet that was presented to you before tonight's meeting. We did have an opportunity to review the comments after we received the letter about 3 o'clock this afternoon. And we're pleased to say that there are no new comments in there, although they did elaborate on some of the comments that had previously raised and that were addressed in the EIR, or the final EIR. We responded to each of the comments on their previous letter in the order with which their attorney had summarized, including all of the attachments that are included in the final EIR. One of the claims that are made in this letter is that we did not, and I wanted to assure the commission and the citizens that we did, in fact, respond to all of the comments. We should also note that when there is a disagreement among experts, say a biologist or a traffic engineer, state law and the courts allow the lead agency to decide which of the 8 experts you believe. In this particular instance, the experts that you have in your draft EIR presented the information and mitigation measures as vetted by your own staff for the proposed project. That is your prerogative as a lead agency to decide which of the experts that you have before you you can believe. That would be a different discussion if this was a negative deck, but instead this is an EIR where this has been fully vetted and you're allowed to make those determinations. We also looked at all of the alternatives that we felt were prudent given the project objectives and the fact that the site is reuse of a previously and now defunct development. So from our perspective, we looked at both reducing the density.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm having trouble making out anything that the speaker's saying.
Is this on? Normally people tell me to be quiet, so if I'm giving permission to be a little louder.
I'm giving you full permission to project and be as loud as you can.
You got it. Can you hear me now back there? Yes. Otherwise, I'll turn around and talk sideways. Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. So starting from the top, there are no new comments in this letter that was received by the Planning Commission this afternoon. We did, in fact, respond to all of the comments that were in the previous Adams Broadwell letter in the final EIR in the order with which the attorney that they used to send the letter presented them to us. Those are all numbered. You can see those there at the very last comment letter in your final EIR. The lead agency is allowed to choose which of the experts they believe when considering a project. In this particular instance, the experts and the mitigation measures included in the draft EIR and in the conditions of approval were all vetted through your professional staff as well as yours truly. And finally, we did, in fact, review a number of alternatives, including a reduced density for both the residential and the commercial, in order to determine if it would move the needle significantly on terms of the significant and overwhelming impacts that were considered in the draft EIR. As it turns out, none of the mitigation or none of the alternatives listed, in fact, move the needle very far because of the nature of the impacts, which are more regional and global in nature. And with that, I just wanted you to note that we did, in fact, review the letter prior to this evening's meeting and don't believe there are any showstoppers that would prevent the Planning Commission from moving forward. I'm available to answer any questions you might have, and I apologize for being quiet. My wife will think that's funny.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have any questions?
I do have a question, Chair, Vice Chair Fortney. Can you add me to the speakers list, please?
Yes, go ahead, Chair.
So I'm curious because first of all, thank you for the presentation, and I apologize for being remote. I do have a question as to the some of the issues that were raised in the letter, in specific, putting aside the issues that were the issues that were raised by the Carmichael letter, the attorney, Mr. Carmichael. We did receive a letter from a citizen that's concerned about water use. And can you tell, so, and I saw the city provided a certification as to the sewer water conditions. But, you know, we do have citizens that are concerned about the drought in the water. Can you just, you know, provide some response on the record for the citizen who we heard from as to her concerns with the drought?
Absolutely. It's an issue that's covered the entire state at this point. There are, of course, legal requirements that we did follow for water supply assessments and consideration. One of the things I'd like to point out to the commission and to the public is projects like this don't happen overnight. This will take several years to come to fruition. It will take several years for it to be fully occupied and firing on all cylinders. And the developer would like to have it happen tomorrow, but in reality, that's just not practical and it doesn't happen that way. So yes, we're under a drought today, but we also have to plan for housing tomorrow. One of the things that's critical to a project like this is consistency with all of the state drought requirements. Front lawn landscaping, which is going the way of the dodo. You know, the internal use of water, the reuse of water. Multifamily residential uses less water than single family. The higher density associated with it. This is not your grandfather's subdivision that used a great deal of water that would impact the resources. It is right to be concerned about these things, and we have provided quite a bit of information, but I understand it's not really accessible to the public. But these things will not come online immediately. They will come on over time, and we have to provide for housing because we have a growing community. So what we do in that case is we have water plans, and we seek water, and we recycle water, and we reuse water, and we use water restrictions within the development itself to ensure that it meets their needs and the needs of the community. So in many ways, it's an upgrade from our standard subdivision that we might have done in the 70s or 80s, and it uses less water overall. Both from the building code standpoint all the way through landscaping, you have adopted the state-required landscape ordinance that would address all of these things in terms of water usage. And that's where a lion's share of a lot of the water gets used, not inside, but actually outside the structure. Does that help, Mr. Chairman?
I think it's helpful. I don't know if, you know, what I take from your initial response is that these projects take time and that it didn't happen overnight. I'm not clear what the relevance of that is. I think that our residents are concerned about whether or not we have water, whether or not we have sufficient water. And I know as a technical matter, the issues that you're saying are true and correct, and I appreciate, not the issues, but your response has been helpful. I think we just have residents that are concerned about drought and water today, notwithstanding how long this project has taken in the planning to come to where we're at right now. But we are, you know, those are, I wouldn't gloss over residents' concerns about water in the future in light of the drought that we're in today, and that things are not going to get easier in the future. It sounds like there are some project design features that mitigate the drought, but I think we want to be responsive to our citizens that are you know, bringing their concerns to us, and I think I'm comfortable with the response you've given, but nonetheless, I think that some of the issues that were outlined in the letter from Mr. Carmichael, those issues, separate from the drought, the concern that I have is the specific reference that was made to the adequacy of the response to the comments I received. And if you could just, you know, so if you could respond, you know, full-throated as to what the whether or not the city's response was adequate to the extent we should be concerned about that. It seems to me like the city's response was adequate, but I'd like you to just kind of take us through what the if you could take us through some of the issues that might not be clear to Mr. Carmichael and his consultants.
So there are 2 points I wanted to make on the water supply assessment. One is keep in mind that we are redeveloping a golf course which had a very high water use. And so it's not like we're taking an open space. There's actually, because it was a high water use, the city had that water supply, and we looked at what the water supply was to make sure it was sufficient to meet this development. And then as part of the water supply analysis, we needed to look at dry and driest years. So we definitely, part of the analysis was looking at drought years like this and making sure that we had adequate supplies to meet this project. And we definitely do as part of that analysis. So hopefully that helps.
You want to take a stab at a couple of the others briefly?
Certainly. From our perspective, this is a relatively standard attorney letter on a final EIR, and the first thing they have to claim is that we haven't responded adequately. We feel we have adequately responded. We've provided you a 300-page final EIR that rivals the draft EIR in terms of complexity and completeness. We've referred to all of the documents in the record by page number and by reference, where we can demonstrate where we provided the analysis that we believe is adequate for the proposed project. Two things about that. The first is I'm not the determiner of that. The city is the determiner of that. And when you take action on the project, you have a set of findings in your packet and ultimately in the council's packet that make that determination. If there's a finding or a comment in here that you don't feel was responded to adequately, please let us know and we will change the record to include additional response. The other thing I will tell you is we did respond to all of these, and many of the comments that are raised in this evening's letter are simply a disagreement among experts. They didn't, for example, appreciate how the biological resources were evaluated. Well, we've included an expert, a biologist themselves, a certified biologist that has done several projects as well. And so this really is a disagreement among experts of whether or not the protocols that were followed were adequate. We reviewed them and felt they were adequate enough for the EIR. The proof will be in the pudding when we go to get permits to construct, and we have to go through other agencies to get those permits. But at the end of the day, in terms of telling the commission and the council and the public what will happen when this project is developed, we feel we've done an adequate job of doing that. And adequacy in this case is in fact the test. Is it adequate? It doesn't need to be perfect, and it doesn't need to be an educational treatise on how to evaluate a project. The rest of this product that was presented, and they talk about noise, for example, and they talk about additive noise where you have two pieces of machinery. Well, two pieces of machinery aren't necessarily noisier than one piece of machinery. And so some of the statements that are made in here don't necessarily hold true in all development projects. There are references to court cases in here that we wouldn't normally use in a project like this because they're not really germane. They question whether we've done enough alternatives analysis, yet they haven't provided their own to suggest to us that they have another alternative they wanted us to provide. So in our opinion, we believe that there's adequate information in your final EIR and in the draft EIR and in the record overall for you to be able to make a decision on the proposed project. The other thing I will let you know is because this was brought in during the public comment period before the commission has acted, we'll of course be responding to these comments and include them in the record as well.
Director Morris, any more communication?
This is the end of the staff presentation, so.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, any other additional questions right now for staff? You do? Okay. Let's come back.
Oh, yeah.
And members of the community, I'm Richard Loki. I am an environmental planner, but I'm also the manager of the Green Tree Project. And the first thing I'd like to say is that this has been a very long process, but a rewarding one in terms of the level and the specificity of input we've received from the neighborhood groups that we have been communicating with, from your staff, and from a whole host of very broad cross-section of experts who collaborated to evaluate the effects of the project and to provide their evidence to the city that ultimately were peer-reviewed and then incorporated into the draft and final EIR. We also have reviewed those documents. I am a CEQA expert in my own right, having done this for 40 years, and I am satisfied that the responses, as Mr. Teague has just explained, are complete and adequate. There has been no sidestepping or camouflaging the fact that this project does have significant environmental effects. We have greenhouse gas emissions that exceed the threshold. They're flagged as significant and unavoidable despite a whole array of mitigation measures and project design features we built into the project. We've mandated electric service for every housing unit in Green Tree. That's part of the project. We got close to the threshold, but we couldn't get underneath it. Vehicle miles traveled, very difficult threshold to stay under with anything bigger than a individual little retail store or a couple single-family homes. But VMT is not the story all by itself. What Green Tree is doing, and if you wouldn't mind advancing to the slide that shows two more forward, I think. There we go. Green Tree is situated uniquely right across Interstate 80 from the city's growing job center. This is where 10,000 jobs are going to be added in the high-tech and biotech industries. Those jobs are coming online now. And what we've done with Green Tree is design a project primarily with workforce housing, 950 units that are designed specifically to meet the needs of those young professionals, dual heads of household, people working in the industry today that are either commuting from outside of town or simply cannot afford housing. What we're doing is providing an opportunity to put that housing in place right next to the job source, to link them together with bicycle and pedestrian connections, and on top of it, to incorporate internally within the project a retail component, complete streets, parks, and open space to make this a sustainable and green living environment. One of the letters that Aaron mentioned that went into your packet update was a letter from Greenbelt Alliance. This organization is very guarded throughout the Bay Area and highly regarded for their work on preserving Greenbelt opportunities and protecting against unbridled urban expansion. The reason they endorsed the Green Tree project was because of its workforce component and its green infrastructure. All of the elements that you heard us talk to during our previous presentations that get people out of their cars, get them on bicycles and on foot, and create a sustainable living opportunity with a different kind of housing product that is not readily available in the market today. I want to take just a moment and mention that while we did not add any new mitigation measures during the final EIR process, we went through a pretty rigorous effort in looking at the comments that came in, not just from the liaison committee, who was very active, but the broader community that commented, including the law firm on behalf of the labor unions. And we looked at the efficacy and the accountability of those mitigation measures. And those are the best labels that I could use to describe the changes that have taken place in a couple of the mitigation measures, where confronted with concerns about controlling dust, fugitive dust, and noise, and erosion, we incorporated a requirement for monitoring by a qualified SWIP practitioner, a person who looks in real time at conditions such as the dryness of the soil, the wind velocity, pending rain events, activities that the project has scheduled, not just those going on immediately, And there is a very robust program here to make sure we do everything that is feasible to control dust, control noise, and contain emissions. We also had a question of you, the commission, during the last study session about some of the energy conservation measures. And I wanted to note that level 2 charging stations are actually to be included in every single-family house in the project. And 15% of all parking spaces in commercial and in multifamily will have fully operable charging stations for EV vehicles. We made a promise to the community and to you that we would engage with your staff to address the outstanding issue of flooding that periodically occurs along Yellowstone Drive and the loop streets that connect with it. We're investing $15 million in on-site stormwater detention and biofiltration basins. And those basins are much, much larger than would be required, as we explained to you at our last meeting, for this project alone. But even so, they don't solve the problem by itself. It's not a problem with flooding that was created by Green Tree, but we wanted to be part of the solution. So we have partnered with the city to commit through your development agreement to half of the entire cost of replacing the undersized storm drain lines in Yellowstone so that when connected with our detention basins, they do the job of relieving stormwater efficiently. We've also incorporated, as we indicated some time back now that we would, traffic calming measures along Yellowstone. Most of you have a good handle on that, I think, by now, but just in summary, there's a very sophisticated design for a small format roundabout that, yes, fire trucks and delivery trucks can make their way through safely, but that slows traffic down, controls speed, and allows pedestrians to safely navigate that awkward three-legged intersection that's there today, along with 2 radar detection devices placed at locations that in this graphic we've noted that the city's traffic engineer, Gwen, had identified as preferred locations, along with a pedestrian-actuated crossing. That crossing is what will help facilitate people walking from that neighborhood over to the South Park in Green Tree, the senior-oriented park. And probably the last important thing I'd like to mention before I sit down or answer any questions you have is that with us this evening is Matt Cota of Bay Area Economics. His firm prepared the fiscal impact analysis that went through, I dare say, the most rigorous review that Vacaville has ever conducted of an economic study for a project. It went through 3 or 4 rounds of comments and questions and analysis and got more conservative as it went along. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, on a net basis, Vacaville, with build out of the Green Tree project, as a community, as a city, municipality, will be receiving somewhere between $700,000 and $850,000 annually of surplus funds. That money will be spent by the city as it deems useful and necessary. In addition to those funds, Green Tree will be building these parks with some participation, I want to emphasize, by the city on the South Park, and it was greatly appreciated. Same thing with maintenance. We'll be maintaining all of these facilities, these park, open space, and trail facilities through a landscape lighting maintenance district, paid for by the project, but with the city participating 50% with respect to that Sutherly Park. Again, much appreciated. We are, after all, looking at some senior housing and workforce housing. It's carrying a pretty heavy load in terms of costs, but we believe, we're very optimistic that this project will be feasible. Those are my comments for this evening, and I'm here along with Michael to answer, and Matt, to answer any questions that you might have.
To hang tight and we'll allow the commissioners an opportunity to ask staff and you questions. I think Commissioner Rudin has some questions for you.
Oh, well, they're more towards staff, but I'll go first. If anyone has. Oh, okay. So I have a few questions. So first off, thank you for being here, and I do support the project. I think it's fantastic how it's going to add more senior housing. It's going to add other housing that we don't have with the missing middle. But I do have a question with traffic that could be probably more geared towards city staff, though. With the traffic calming, that is, in my opinion, a really big thing, considering that it is a senior neighborhood. And I've driven through there. And it'll be nice to have the radars, but it's not going to slow anybody down. As we saw yesterday with the accident on 80, and people were bailing off of 80, people will go path of least resistance. If they can shoot down Yellowstone to get onto Nut Tree or anywhere else, radars aren't going to slow them down. So, I mean, I just would like to have on record that I do think that the radar, it's not enough. And then I am curious, why with the parks, the South Park is going to be used primarily by residents over in the Green Tree area. Why was that accommodation made that for the LLMD, that 50% of it, why does the city have the burden of 50% of it? Whereas with the North Park, the city only has a burden of 10%.
That's a good question, and I'll give you my best answer, and I'll let staff add to that or take away from it. The city's standard policy is that with respect to maintenance, the general fund contributes 10% to neighborhood park maintenance. We're only talking about neighborhood parks here. And so at the same time, this project of 1,149 mostly workforce and senior housing units, by current city standards, is required to provide a little less than 6 acres of neighborhood park. We have a 6-acre neighborhood park on the north side of the project that is sufficient to provide more than 100% of the project's needs. And so that park in the south side, south of Sequoia, is an extra park. It's a special park as the park master plan identifies them by classification. It is designed not exclusively, but with a lot of careful design emphasis to accommodate the needs of seniors. We have 199 senior units that we're providing. The surrounding Leisuretowne neighborhood is underserved by public parks today. And so it's our expectation, and I think the city's, that that park will be used heavily by the existing neighborhood. So it was our request that we would dedicate the land, we would build the improvements to a certain cost level. We asked for the city to participate at some level, recognizing that there was a shared responsibility to meet that unmet demand today. So after a lot of discussion, a lot of mathematics, this was the solution that was arrived at in the development agreement. So we're providing far than is required of us, up and beyond our requirements under your Nexus study and your ordinance, just on parks alone, not to mention open space and trails. And so what we were looking for was some level of participation on this extra park that serves primarily the existing adjoining neighborhood.
Yes, and I understand, but the city will have the 50% burden of maintaining that park.
And I want to clarify just one point. In terms of the math, the city doesn't pay for half of the park. Nowhere near that. The city has said in the development agreement, in the draft agreement, that it will allow us to use half of our park impact fee obligation to meet to be used against the cost to build the
That's
park.
the cost to build the park. I'm talking in the future, year, 3, 5, 10 years down the road.
You're talking
City-
maintenance, not
maintenance.
capital improvements.
Correct.
Very good.
Yes, maintenance of it.
Okay.
And I actually read through this entire packet, but I didn't get a chance to ask city staff if there is a precedent where there's other parks that have that exception, because I am, I don't know if concern's the right word, is that will this set a precedent of, okay, well, if we do a little bit more, the city gets to bear the burden down the road?
I'll defer to Aaron
That's
to
what I meant,
answer
it's more
that.
of a city question.
Commissioner
And
Rudin,
then
hold on.
that's-
Director Morris has an answer for
Oh,
you.
sorry.
Let's, yeah.
This is definitely an issue that staff explored extensively internally and also with the applicant. This park is unique and different than other city parks that developers will build because it serves a special population. Staff's rationale in supporting this 50-50 maintenance draft and the development agreement is that this park, if properly built with the features that are shown, will ultimately provide some of the community park and other similar amenities that folks in Vacaville enjoy, but these seniors will be able to get it close to their home. So it's sort of on that rationale that we thought that giving some special consideration to sharing in the maintenance of this, because it serves a greater need than just a typical neighborhood park, both for the existing community and the new community.
So it is open for the new community to use.
Oh, absolutely. And actually,
for the rest
both
of
parks are available for everyone in Vacaville to use as public parks. They are designed though with specific features to serve,
That's
specific
understandable,
populations.
yes, yeah, that's understandable and appreciated. Okay.
Commissioner Rudin, before you leave that topic, it occurred to me that from a cost standpoint, there's another important consideration here. I mentioned the fiscal impact analysis. It took this contribution into account. And so what we're talking about for that 4.5 acre neighborhood park south of Sequoia is and Tim Burke will remember these numbers, but I think we're talking on the order of $130,000 a year to maintain that park. And so if half of that burden, call it $70,000, fell on the city, that's separate from the 700 to 850 in addition annually that the city will get in net revenues from Green Tree. So the fiscal impact analysis was a consideration in the city even looking at participating in that maintenance program.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Good for now? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You'll probably be back up here shortly. We're going to move forward with the public hearing and allow the public the opportunity to come up. I'm going to ask you to state your name and please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and you will see the light in front of you, let you know when you're almost done.
And Planning Commission out in Boulder Valley, Browns Valley. The thing about these parks is the fact that I live in an assessed area. And what the city does is we end up, I'm paying probably, I don't know, am I paying for full-time employees or part-time? What they do is they contract it out and you pay an assessment. And I have, a contractor working out there. Well, they don't come up with all the funds that you think. It doesn't work like that. And I didn't hear anything about native plants or anything like that. Drought tolerant plants, no mention of that. I'm sure that should be part of the plan if you're going to build a park. Bring back the pollinators, things like that. And those assessments that you're paying should be for full-time employees, not part-time. Okay? And the budget is upside down. Nothing against police and fire and all that. $50 million police budget, $35 million fire. All right? Well, parks, recreation, 2 departments, $10 million. Okay? That, to me, is a little bit upside down. So these parks that are used by all these people, and a community park's a large park that has swimming pools, that kind of stuff. These are neighborhood parks. These are more cookie cutter, smaller parks. All right? And I think that detention basin is probably part of the open space they're giving you, more than likely. So also the housing, moderate density. Go down to Fruitvale and look at, that was moderate density. And the windows are about from here to where you're sitting right now. Moderate, I don't know what they consider moderate density, but it's pretty tight. So those are a couple things I noticed. And I don't know if this 6-acre park has restrooms in it or whatever. Is that part of the plan? Haven't heard anything about that either. That's a big expense and a big maintenance problem. So I would like to see the Parks Department and these departments put more money towards those departments. Because if you're going to build something, it has to be maintained. And the maintenance, if I'm paying an assessment, I want to see full-time employees out there with benefits. That would be the way to go, I think. All right? Because they always cut corners and we end up with part-time. So those are a couple of things I just thought I'd mention. And the native plants would be big too. If you want to save water, you better start planting native plants. I mentioned this at the council meeting, and I drive out and I see the same thing, stuff coming out of the nurseries around here, okay? But there's a lot of native plants that adhere to the soil, save water, and more drought tolerant, okay? And I know we're going to eliminate lawns and all that, but it would be nice to see that in this new park and everything. So I hated to see the golf course go, because that's who used the golf course, for the people that lived out there playing golf all the time. So if you're going to develop it, it should be done that way, more towards the park end of thing. That's what I think. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And what we'll do is we'll have you all speak, give your comments, and then we'll have the applicant or staff, if you can kind of keep track of what's going on with plants and some other things, come back and answer all the questions in one wrap up. Thank you. There's other people that wish to speak. You can line up in the back. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Andrew Watson, and I live in the community called Maplewood, which is across the way from the proposed Green Tree project on the other side of Leisuretowne Road. The letter you received from Ms. Scammon, she also is a resident of that same neighborhood. So I only have two questions that I haven't seen tackled in the presentation here. What about the traffic situation on Leisuretowne Road? It's already a mess. They've got lots of houses being built further on down the road. This will increase traffic coming down into Leisuretowne, into Yellowstone. What is being done to either widen the road or handle the infrastructure there? The second question I have is, we already notice a lot of problems with the sewage pumping station on the corner of Sequoia and Leisuretowne Road. And so obviously we think there's a big sewage issue that'll be exacerbated by the Green Tree project. And I didn't see that being addressed by the reports given here so far. And that's all I have.
Hold on one second, okay? I'm not clearing on the, how do I get this to clear? I can't get this to clear. I keep starting back over on my speaker time.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Klein, commissioners, and staff. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Kevin Carmichael, and I'm here on behalf of Napa Solano Residents for Responsible Development. Residents is an unincorporated association of individuals and labor organizations that includes City of Vacaville and other area residents. Residents supports sustainable development projects that comply with environmental and health and safety laws. Residents opposes this project because the city has not complied with CEQA's requirements to fully disclose and mitigate the project's significant environmental impacts. and the project does not comply with local land use plans and policies. We respectfully request that the Planning Commission remand the project to staff to prepare a legally adequate revised DIR, which fully discloses and mitigates the project's significant environmental impacts before making a recommendation to the City Council. We did submit a letter today to the city, supported by comments from 3 experts, which demonstrates that the project will result in significant unmitigated noise, transportation, energy, and biological resources impacts that the city failed to address in the DEIR or FEIR. And as such, the Planning Commission cannot make the findings required to recommend project approval to the City Council. For example, the project will result in significant unmitigated construction noise impacts. The city's noise ordinance requires projects to determine the construction noise levels that will be generated by construction equipment operating simultaneously on the project site. Our noise expert, Derek Watry, performed this calculation and concluded that construction noise will result in noise levels from 79 to 82 decibels. These noise levels exceed the city's noise threshold of 54 decibels by 25 to 28 decibels at nearby sensitive receptors, and would therefore result in a significant impact. The FEIR failed to disclose this impact because the FEIR only considered noise from individual pieces of construction equipment. Additionally, our transportation consultant found that the project will result in significant VMT impacts which were not properly analyzed in the DEIR or FEIR because the FEIR incorrectly discounted VMT based on project features that apply to dense urban infill sites that do not exist at this project site. And our biological resources consultant concluded that the project will result in significant undisclosed habitat loss for Swainson hawk and burrowing owl, resulting in an unmitigated significant impact to threatened and protected species. We urge the Planning Commission to continue this hearing until residents' comments and the comments of other community members are addressed in a legally adequate revised EIR. Thank you for your time.
Bless you. Everybody else that would like to address the commission? Come on down.
My name is Bob Dobray. Moved to Vacaville in 1966, moved to Leisure-Town in 1980. I'm a registered professional engineer, state of California, now retired. First of all, one thing that has not been addressed is the impact on the Leisure-Town residents that have purchased houses and lots on the golf course. If people remember, in the early 80s, Sire was selling lots, the last open space there, $40,000 for lots. If they were on the golf course, they were $59,000, $60,000 per lot. There's always been a definite increase in value on living on the golf course with a fairway lot. I've talked to several lawyers thus far, and they all assure me that if the value of my property is impacted, I have a suit against the organization or the company decreasing the value of my property. They also assure me that I cannot do anything to make Sire Industries operate the golf course. It has to go through the formal process that we're talking about now of changing the zoning and on and on and on. But I'd just like to let everyone here know that if this goes through, there will be a class action lawsuit brought by at least 125 people that live on the golf course. And we're looking at substantially, I think, $30 million impact. Be some lawyers' fees on that. And then again, we never know what kind of punitive damages the judge may impose. So I just want everybody to be aware of it. Nothing happens until the zoning changes. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that it for public comment? Anybody have comments?
My name is Roberto Valdez, and I'm a longtime resident here in Vacaville. I don't live in that area of the city. I live in the creek side, and that's enough for me. But anyway, I'm here because I did look at some of the data. It's a lot. And I'm going to make several points today. One is complying with your 3-minute response. Or what? First of all, in looking at the data there, I think there's sufficient data to postpone or table the approval of both the FEIR or the mitigation monitoring report project today, so that the city can adequately respond to that, to the interested stakeholders, especially the biologists and of course the attorneys. You don't want to end up in litigation. The other thing is that, and by the way, I want to say something about the litigation. I'm not impressed that you included the Green Belt Alliance. I've had experience in seeing how they work with the Lagoon Valley project, and at all, I don't think that makes a difference. They made some interesting points, but I don't consider them a reliable source either. So the other point, responding to my letter number 7, I'm very concerned that this project will not protect live oak, valley oaks, or the silken oaks within the conservation measures. In addition, there is no guarantee to educate the public, park users, about preserving, protecting the Swainson boring owls, white-tailed kites, and other related species, associated species within the project. Instead, it's kind of letting for some sort of a city committee to determine the extent of those conservation measures. Number 4, I'm concerned about this project not adequately implementing sufficient measures to comply with CEQA standards. It was brought up by some attorneys and very recent data. I think you need to allow the public to absorb that, respond to not only the expert, but the ordinary citizens. So I have to say that I do not support this project as is, even though I do appreciate the developers' efforts to come up or comply with a private project that both the local residents will be happy and will fit within the surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you.
Any additional comments?
I live in Leisure Town. I live on the golf course on Teton. Been involved in with this project since February of 2016. And so I'm happy to see it get to this point. My house borders the golf course, and losing that beautiful background was painful, as some of our commenters have pointed out. That actually leads me to respond to one of Commissioner Rudin's comments about the park, because the golf course is actually now zoned recreational. And our homes, some of the homes, lot sizes were reduced because of bordering the park as a recreational element. And so once that 185 acres of recreation disappears, we're pretty happy to get our 4.5-acre park to replace some of the recreational space. And of course, we're getting the trails, walking and biking trails as well, and we're very, very pleased about that. So I'm very pleased, frankly, that the city is pitching in on the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance of this small park in our neighborhood. We've not had a park before. We've had the golf course. And so we're happy to have this amenity. I should also point out, we pay Measure M. Measure M was supposed to enhance senior facilities. It hasn't done that yet. And so a little bit of my attitude is this is at least something the city can do for this neighborhood. So having said that, I would like to say that the first 4 years of this planning were difficult. The last 2.5 years have been much less so, thanks to the Lokis, the father and son team that the Sire Corporation brought on board, and good for them. Things opened up after that, and thanks also to the city staff who were dedicated to meeting with us and helping us out on the planning. At this point in time, I have to say, they have responded to every single issue that we raised. Not always, we've had to make compromises along the way too. One of them, frankly, is on traffic and traffic calming. We'd love to have another stop sign, but we were pleased to get what we got. So more is better, but something is better than nothing. We are getting open space behind our existing homes. We are getting bike walk trails. We are going to have direct access to shopping, to restaurants, to the grocery and so forth. And we really appreciate that. We have even dealt with a fencing issue where the Parks and Rec has allowed bifurcated fencing with wrought iron tops that do not obstruct the views of the existing homes. So to wrap up, Chairman Fortney, Vice Chair, I would like to say that Chris Winther, who's here with me, is one of the liaisons, and I'm one of the liaisons that worked on this project over the last few years. We support this plan, and we agree that it is ready for approval and that it should be moved by the commission to the city council for the next stage. And I'd also at the end like to say thank you to all the Leisure Town residents, those who are here tonight, who have provided input, who have supported us, who have asked good questions, who have come up with ideas. Thank you to the residents. Thank you to the Lokis. Thank you to the commission for their interest. Thank you to the city staff in community development, public works, parks and rec, and administration. This has all around been a significant cooperative and collaborative effort, and we are appreciative.
Thank you. Thank you for wrapping up. Do we have anybody else that would like to address the commission?
I'm Dawn Perez. I live on Bighorn Court, and I want to just totally extend Marge's comments. Thank you to everyone who has put in so much time, effort, and energy. To the Lokis who took on the project when we felt like we were going down the tubes. There's been so many negotiations and so much money spent on this. I am tired of looking at the blight behind my house.
Dawn, come right into the mic.
Okay, I'm sorry. I am tired of looking at the blight behind my house. 6.5 years, and every few months it gets rototilled, and it's just awful. It will be great to have some development, a park, and places where we can go to enjoy our living space. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it? If I close public comment, then I can come back to staff and let them answer the questions. Any other speakers? Okay, with that, we'll close the public comment. And I am going to ask staff and the applicant to address some of the questions from the public, please.
One of the comments that I'd like to address is there was a comment or question about drought tolerant and native plant species. And I'd like to point out that the specific plan specifically says that the plan provides for a variety of native and non-native drought tolerant plants. There's actually a plant list as well. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, thank you, yeah. Can you get it closer?
There we go. Sorry
you can
about
start
that.
From the top, yeah, thank you.
Okay, from the top. On drought tolerant or a request for how the project addresses native species, I did want to point out that the specific plan specifically addresses this, and it calls for a variety of native and drought tolerant plant species. There's actually a whole list of plant species that meet that criteria that are a part of the specific plan. And that document is online, so the public can go ahead and look that up. It's specifically, they are interested on page 4-4 of the specific plan.
Director Morris?
Vice Chair Fortney, I wanted to respond to a comment about the sewage pumping station issues and just let everyone know, our utilities director's not here this evening, but there is a planned odor control project at that location that should greatly improve conditions. And this project will be paying sewer fees that will go toward that planned improvement. If the commission wants to hear more about the details of Leisure Town and the improvements, we have Assistant Director Tim Burke here this evening and also our traffic engineer, Gwen Owens. They can speak to that.
Commission, is there anybody that would like to have Mr. Burke come speak to us? I'd like to. Yeah, Tim, please. How are you?
Thanks.
You're live. Specific question, or do you want to get an update on the sewer? Sewer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, Director Morris was correct in that the project will not only contribute impact fees that will help fund a...
Have you speak a little bit louder so we can
Sure.
get everybody behind you to hear. Thank you.
The project will contribute impact fees that will fund an odor control project that is already scheduled for that lift station, but the project also plans to provide an additional space for that lift station. That lift station right there is like on a postage stamp. And so the project is going to be dedicating additional property to the lift station that where we'll be able to expand it a little bit to provide the odor control equipment. We need the additional property. So once that happens, it is already on the books. So, in the next year or two.
Commissioner Wilkerson, satisfied there? Yes. Good. Director Morris? You got off easy tonight.
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Staff, did you have anything else that you wanted to follow up on any of the questions from our public? You're good? Okay, thank you. Commissioners, I'm coming back to you for any additional questions or comments. Is there any commissioners that would like to speak? Absolutely. Commissioner Rudin.
Okay, I have an easy question. With the plants, is there any alternatives to the sycamore trees? And the reason I ask is, aside from my own dislike, they are horrible for pollen, and this is going to be a park, and the park by my house has sycamore trees, and they're just terrible for allergies, even with people without allergies. So I was curious if there was any alternative to sycamore trees.
I could look to Director Morse on whether the commission wanted to have that as a condition of approval.
I'm going to say that this is really an issue for the Parks and Rec Commission because they will decide they'll recommend on the final design of the park. But we can absolutely note that as a comment from the Planning Commission and send that along.
I see no other comments from commissioners. Are we good? Commissioner Klein, are you there?
Vice Chair Fortney, I'm here.
Do you have?
I was not going to ask this question, but I'm going to ask anyway since you're calling on me. So it's not lost to me that this comes before the commission on merit hearing. how would a future merit hearing impact the current promises that are being made to the residents today to secure their support? Is there anything off limits for a future merit hearing that might take away some of these project design features?
We have Director Morris going to
I
answer.
think that's a question for staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Klein. This is definitely not a merit hearing. This is the formal consideration of a development proposal. With that,
Excuse me, I know this is not a merit hearing. I'm saying that this matter began on merit hearing. Is that correct?
yes, as is customary in Vacaville, this started with a merit hearing. It turned into a development proposal. I think your question is getting at what happens if some future developer or entity wants to make changes to this approved project. Let's say it gets approved and it moves along. And the answer to that is a little bit complex, and I will summarize. We have the normal thing where if you come in and you want to change your approved project, you have to go through a public process. And it wouldn't involve a merit hearing, but it would involve public hearings much like this one. Unique and special to this particular project through the development agreement process, we have built in Leisure Town community notification in the event that anything changes about this project. So we've put in an extra step where if someone were to come forward with changes, we would immediately notify the community, and then of course we would conduct the normal public process. So I'd say nothing really prevents people in the future from wanting to change things, but we've built in some standard and unique ways of ensuring that the community would be notified if that were to occur.
That's excellent, Aaron. Excuse me, Director Morrison. My concern, this is the community is, as we've seen, is behind this project. There are some issues that we've heard from others tonight that are concerns, to be sure, but I think that the community support with the liaisons and full disclosure, I've met with the liaisons, and so a number of us have, I believe, and we know that this project has been cooking for a while. My concern is that I don't want, and I'm just going to use just in the parlance, I think it's called a bait and switch. So that's when people are promised something and then they, either they move away or they die or something happens where there's a brand new set of citizens. You have a different developer that might come in, slip in, and take away all of those things through some later procedure that would be a bait and switch. So I'm comfortable that there's something in the development agreement as to notice. I have not reviewed it personally, so you'll have to excuse me, Aaron, Director Morris, in asking you, what is the form of notice in the agreement?
I'm looking for that clause right now, but I did want to note that also having a development agreement that sets forth this developer's obligations and the city's obligations for a specified term is another method of protecting against unexpected changes to the project. But I'm trying to find that section. I don't know if the Lokis of Dick, yes, I think he can identify that section.
Mr. Loki, please.
While Aaron is looking at that, again, Richard Loki for Green Tree, I want to note that the development agreement evolved over a period of many months, and it incorporates very precise language speaking to the density ranges, consistent with that specific plan. So and the development agreement has a successor clause in it that is ironclad. It applies to all the current owners, all future owners, their heirs and successors and agents, et cetera. And so we're one of those successors to come back in and propose something that was inconsistent with these density ranges for workforce housing, for example. It would require an amendment of the development agreement. It would require an amendment of the specific plan. And it would most likely require secret review along with that, because this project is an integrated whole that looks at VMT analysis and air quality analysis as a entire project. So it is not a small matter to come back and seek some unraveling of what we've put together here.
Thank you very much.
Vice Chair Fortney. I wanted to correct what I said. It's a condition of approval number 108B, And the condition specifically says the property owner or developer shall provide notice to the Leisure Town Homeowners Association regarding application to the city for any proposed changes to the existing entitlements or subsequent entitlements sought for the project until the project is substantially complete. But also note that the development agreement requires an annual review of the implementation of the development agreement, and that's an opportunity to check in on how the project is going and to facilitate public input and public eyes on how this project moves forward if it's approved.
Confirmed.
Thank you very much, Aaron, for running that down. And my comment is really directed at our current. So let me back up and say, I think we have an excellent team in place, and I'm very, very encouraged by the level of outreach that Director Morris and others have engaged in, and I think that this is an excellent plan. My concern is that we might not have a Director Morris in this role in 20 years, right? So the issue here is whether or not the notice is going to be adequate. I think at our last meeting, we heard some concerns from the community about the type of notice they received from the city previously. And it evidently, there are factual issues in dispute, but I mean, it seems that the community was not happy about the notice they received. So, I don't want to be prickly here, but that notice, I don't know what notice means to the HOA. So when I say form of notice, I mean, is it a newspaper clipping? Is it a sign? What's the form of the notice? What does the notice have to say to let people know that there's going to be a change in the community, and that they are being provided the process that's due to them. And so when we just have vague references to notice, I don't know if that's enough, Aaron, or Director Morris. And hopefully, I don't know if there's an easy cleanup here, but is there a way for us to provide for the form of notice and what it, and we don't want to tie anyone's hands in the future per se, but we do want to provide the community some level of guarantee that's a little more ironclad than just a vague reference to notice. I don't know if our city attorney can help us.
I think
put this down a little bit, but that's my concern.
I think we hear you, Chair. Thank you very much. I think Director Morris is going to comment.
The term notice is broadly used, but it would be a written notice mailed to property owners listed on the assessor's rolls. That does not mean that if whoever's staffing the city at that time, if they know the email addresses or the names and phone numbers of people, it doesn't mean they wouldn't do that too. But typically the notice would be sent to those property owners and any known associations. Written notices, I've worked in government for 22 years. We tend to be fairly oblique in how we describe what is going on. But the intent behind the condition is it would be a plainly worded written document that would provide the public with the opportunity to understand what changes were proposed and participate fully in the vetting of those proposed changes.
Thank you very much. I have Commissioner Vargas and then Commissioner Wilkerson.
Yeah, I did want to know, I had a question regarding the agreement, but Mr. Loki answered the question, so I will relinquish.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Wilkerson.
Thank you so much. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I want to make sure we don't go down a rabbit hole of hypotheticals and just keep our focus right now on this project. And so if there aren't any other comments, I'd like to, by simple motion, recommend that the City Council certify the final environmental impact report and findings of fact and overriding considerations, water supplement assessment, and mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and approve the general plan amendment, Green Tree specific plan, rezoning, development standard exception, development agreement, vesting, tentative, subdivision map, and plan development. I think I got it right.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Commissioner Rudin?
Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair, before we proceed, I would just like to note that the recommendation by simple motion was to recommend that the City Council adopt the Green Tree Project resolutions and ordinances substantially similar to the resolutions and ordinance attached. That being that what was provided to you tonight is in draft form, and we would like to make any cleanup changes to those that would not be substantive in nature, but just making it clear to the commission that what's been provided is a draft ordinances and resolution for the City Council. So if we could include the substantially similar language in the motion, that would be beneficial for proceeding to city council with this.
So the motion holds with the change? Yes. And we have a second from Commissioner Rudin. Madam Secretary, can we have roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Vargas,
Yes.
Commissioner Lightfoot,
Yes.
Commissioner Rudin,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkerson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fortney,
Yes.
Chair Klein.
Yes.
And the motion passed. Can you read us back what we have? Nancy, what they got?
By simple motion, recommend that the Vacaville City Council adopt the Green Tree Project resolutions and ordinances substantially similar to the resolutions and ordinances attached to the staff report, including the supplemental memo, and certify the final environmental impact report and adopt a statement of overriding considerations and mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Adopt the general plan amendment and rezoning. Approve the water supply assessment, specific plan, development agreement, vesting tentative subdivision map, and planned development for the Green Tree Project with the changes to the findings of fact, condition number 106, and the development agreement as noted in the supplemental memo.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Wait a minute, I'll give everybody a minute before we go to commissioner comments and close. Go ahead.
The only thing I meant to add was to thank Mr. Loki for working with the community.
That's okay. No, once, we're going to let everybody clear out, then we'll wrap up with commissioner comments. Excuse me, I will ask. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Our meeting's not over yet. That hearing has been done. We still have to have commissioners' closing comments. So if you guys could move your conversation outside or into lobby, we'll be wrapped up in a few minutes. Thank you very much. I'm going to hold you in contempt. Okay, and our final business. Did we lose Commissioner? He's back. Our final business of the evening will be commissioner comments. Mr. Vargas? Any comments?
I do. First and foremost, I wanted to thank Marge and the Green Tree Group for inviting the commissioners, being very open and communicative. I think, coming in on the tail end, I'm sure there were several bumps and undulations across as you move forward with the project, but in the end, it seemed like it worked out very well. And I did have a conversation with Councilman Silva last night, and hoping that with this moving forward, we can talk about a senior center for some services to that area. And so really, I think that's kind of been our shift in focus. So I wanted to thank everyone. And of course, the citizens and those who live in Green Tree, and to the commission and the city staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vargas. Commissioner Lightfoot? You're on.
Thank you. I'm inspired by your community participation. The city of Vacaville owes a debt of gratitude to the community that participated with the developer in this plan. you've shaped this landscape for years to come. And I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Rudin,
No, I'm good.
you good? Commissioner Wilkerson?
Just want to thank again Green Tree staff, neighborhood and community people. What a long process you guys have been through. I mean, when the golf course closed, everyone was upset. So finally getting to something 5 years later, 6 years later, 7 years later, and sticking it out is fortitude and fantastic on your part. I second. I would love to see a senior community center out there. Quickly shifting gears, on behalf of the Planning Commission and myself, I'd like to offer an apology for the last meeting to Mr. Tom Filippi. Not happy with the way he was treated, not happy with the way he was treated outside of this meeting, and I understand there was an altercation. So, you know, on behalf of the Planning Commission, I really want to put that on public record.
Thank you. Chair Klein, would you like to add to Commissioner comments?
Thank you, Vice Chair Fortney, and very, very nice work tonight. I think everyone is very proud of this project, and you know, as to the comments that were directed to Mr. Filippi at the last meeting, it's never, I would agree with Mr. Wilkerson, or Commissioner Wilkerson, it's definitely not appropriate. This is the first I'm hearing about it, but to the extent that we can learn something from civility tonight, I think the community really stepped up, and it's wonderful to see the direct engagement. So again, very nice job, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My comments kind of fall into the same. I left with the last comments, hopefully being the residents in Leisure Town that want to see this project approved. My comments more along the lines of Mr. Wilkerson and the chair, in that I want to apologize to Tom Filippi. At our last meeting, his integrity and his character were brought into question, and I felt like the comments weren't criticism towards the project. They were more of an attack, and they were just mean. And I know Tom he's given countless hours to many families and to many projects in this community. I know Tom to be a very generous and caring human being, and I hope he continues to keep giving to the people of Vacaville and well as the city. So with that, I would like to close this meeting, and we are adjourned.